If you are watching this video, you're already familiar with Jane Austen and Lady Whistledown from the popular Netflix series Bridgerton. You might find this video a bit strange or disrespectful, but Jane Austen has always been one of my all-time favorite authors. While watching Bridgerton, Lady Whistledown's character simply reminded me of Austen. And to be clear, I'm not comparing them. I'm not comparing their writing abilities, talent, or storytelling, or how famous they are, or anything like that. This is simply an observation. I'm not claiming it as a fact, and your opinion is most welcome. The comment section is open. Okay, now picture Lady Whistledown for a second. A mysterious writer hiding behind anonymity, watching high society from the sidelines, taking notes on every awkward marriage proposal, every ridiculous social rule, every person pretending to be more important than they really are, then turning all of it into must-read entertainment. That's the whole thrill of Bridgerton, right? The scandal, the weed, the power of someone who sees society clearly and says what everyone else is too polite to admit. Lady Whistledown is fictional, but Jane Austen existed over 200 years earlier. When people think of Austen, they usually imagine tea, romance, ballroom, falling in love with rich lords. That slow burn romance that makes you blush. But Austen wasn't just simply writing love stories. She was quietly roasting the society around her. She wrote about wealthy families obsessed with status, mothers treating marriage like a business deal, men who thought too highly of themselves, women trapped in a system where their future depended almost entirely on marrying well. Instead of openly attacking society, she turned it into fiction. She disguised criticism as entertainment. She made readers laugh at the very world they lived in. And the sharpest part, many of the people reading her books probably didn't even realize they were being mocked. That was her genius. Now, this made me realize Jane Austen wasn't just a novelist. She was a critic of her time, just like how Lady Whistledown is in Bridgerton. To understand just how bold Jane Austen was, you have to understand the world she lived in. This was the early 1800s, a time when women were expected to be accomplished but not ambitious. They could play piano, paint flowers, speak French, do embroidery work, but publicly building a career, that was a different story, especially in literature. Writing itself wasn't forbidden for women. Plenty of women wrote letters, journals, even stories for family circles. But publishing for the public, especially for money, could be seen as improper. It suggested ambition, and ambition in women was often treated with suspicion. A respectable woman was supposed to be modest, private, and socially graceful, not someone openly entering the marketplace of ideas. Now imagine being that woman, and also writing books that quietly mocked the very society judging you. That made things even riskier because Austen wasn't writing harmless fairy tales. She was dissecting class obsession, marriage pressure, financial desperation, and social hypocrisy. She was making people laugh at their own behavior. And if the wrong people took offense, it could damage her reputation and by extension her family's. So when her first novel was published, it didn't say Jane Austen on the cover. It said, by a lady. That phrase did two things at once. It protected her identity and it reminded readers that the author belonged to the very social world she was observing. She wasn't some outsider throwing stones. Now, some women writers of the time chose male pen names to be taken more seriously. But Austen didn't do that. She didn't pretend to be a man. She didn't use a fake identity. She also didn't fully step into public authorship. She chose a middle path. She remained anonymous, but unmistakably female. That choice mattered because it allowed her to speak as a woman without making herself the public subject. The focus stayed on the books, on the observations, on the satire. Her identity became secondary, and that gave her work a strange kind of power. Readers are engaging with her ideas without attaching them to a public personality. People couldn't easily dismiss her as someone chasing attention or acting outside social role. That anonymity gave her room to speak freely. She could criticize society without becoming the center of controversy herself. It also made her writing more powerful. People focused on her ideas instead of attaching them to her identity. And that's what made Austen so effective. She didn't attack society openly. Instead, she used fiction as her tool, quietly revealing its flaws from within. Jane Austen exposed society by turning everyday social behavior into stories, and not just any stories. Stories so entertaining that readers happily followed the romance while quietly absorbing the criticism underneath. Take Pride and Prejudice. Most people remember it as a love story between Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy. And yes, it is that, but it's also a sharp commentary on status and marriage. The entire plot revolves around money, inheritance, and social rank. The Bennet sisters don't just need husbands. They need financially secure husbands because their family estate will pass to a male relative. Marriage isn't framed as pure romance, it's survival. And Austen makes that painfully clear. Characters like Charlotte Lucas openly marry for security, not love. Meanwhile, Mrs. Bennet treats matchmaking like full-time job. It's funny but also revealing. Austen is showing how limited women's choices really were. Then there's Emma. At first it seems like a light-hearted story about a wealthy young woman who meddles in other people's love lives. But underneath that, Austen is examining class blindness. Emma thinks she understands everyone around her, but her privilege distorts her view. She makes assumptions based on social rank and appearance, and those assumptions repeatedly fail. Austen uses Emma's mistakes to highlight how obsessed society was with class distinctions. And then there's Sense and Sensibility. This one digs into reputation and emotional restraint. Women were expected to behave with perfect control no matter what they felt. A public display of emotion could damage how others saw you. So the novel constantly contrasts inner truth with outer appearance, who you really are versus who society expects you to be. And that's exactly the kind of polished social world Lady Whistledown tears apart in Bridgerton. She reveals what's happening beneath the surface, the hidden motives, the private embarrassments, the truths people work hard to conceal. And Austen did the same thing. She looked at elegant drawing rooms and saw insecurity. She looked at courtship rituals and saw negotiation. She looked at polite conversation and hard-coded social competition. Her books are filled with gossip, misunderstandings, whispered judgments, and carefully managed reputations. In other words, the same ingredients that make high society dramas so addictive today. The difference is that Austen wasn't just entertaining readers. She was documenting the rules of her world and quietly questioning them. That's why her novels still feel relevant, because while the clothes and customs have changed, the social games haven't disappeared. People still chase status, still manage appearances, still care too much about what others think. And Austen saw all of it with incredible precision. That's why her influence lasted far beyond her own lifetime. She didn't just write stories for her era, she captured patterns of human behavior that never really go out of style. Jane Austen eventually became one of the most famous writers in literary history, even though at first most readers didn't even know her name. In fact, many people only learned her true identity after her death. And while Lady Whistledown and Austen are obviously very different figures, they do share one important similarity. Both acted as sharp observers of society. But there's also a major difference. Lady Whistledown in Bridgerton is bold and direct in her attacks. She names names. She exposes scandals publicly. Her writing creates chaos almost instantly. She is essentially an anonymous gossip columnist dropping social bombs into elite circles. Austen wasn't doing that. She wasn't secretly publishing real people's scandals. She wasn't targeting individuals in public, and she definitely wasn't trying to destroy reputations for entertainment. Instead, she worked through fiction, through invented characters, irony, humor, awkward conversations, and painfully accurate social situations. Her criticism was quieter but sharp in a completely different way. Rather than exposing one specific person, Austen exposed entire pattern of behavior. At the same time, it's important to remember that Austen was writing novels, while Lady Whistledown writes society papers. Their methods were different, but both were revealing uncomfortable truth about the worlds around them, and both understood something very clever. People often accept criticism more easily when it arrives wrapped in entertainment. So, even though Austen wasn't a secret gossip writer exposing aristocrats one by one, the comparison actually does make sense. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.